This woman found herself transmigrated into the role of the malicious villainess, Eris, in a romance novel. Despite being the only daughter of a marquis and the fiancée of the crown prince, she was set up as a pitiful sacrifice in the story. Though she deeply loved the crown prince, his heart belonged only to the sweet and pitiable Helena, while Eris faced his cruelty. Just moments ago, Eris endured a ridiculous coming-of-age ceremony orchestrated by the queen and the crown prince, aiming to turn her into a laughingstock. Fortunately, with her knowledge of the original plot, Eris diffused the situation beforehand. Now, approaching the king who was in conversation with Marquis Mazarian, the king warmly called Eris his daughter-in-law and inquired about her conversation with the crown prince. Eris politely responded, though internally she couldn't help but sarcastically think, "I'm sure they are worrying that I will ask to cancel the engagement," so he conveniently brushes aside the issue with a simple daughter-in-law. Marquis Mazarian quickly intervened to smooth things over, mentioning Eris's cheerful expression as a sign that any misunderstandings had likely been resolved. Eris understood that Marquis Mazarian wouldn't let anything tarnish the reputation of the Mazarian family. In the royal system that allowed polygamy, the grievances she faced today were relatively minor. If Eris were to be infertile in the future, the royal family would unhesitatingly bring Helena into the harem. After all, only the crown prince can directly ask for the annulment of the engagement. Unable to contain her frustration, Eris muttered to herself, "If your child is going to cause trouble, you should settle it properly. And don't forget to leave an escape just in case." Lost in her thoughts, Eris was interrupted by the king's voice. "My dear, do you remember what I told you before?" With a dim look in her eyes, Eris lowered her head and replied, "I remember. I harbor no jealousy." Hearing her response, the king cast an approving gaze and praised, "The marquis has truly raised a gentle and virtuous daughter." As the king and the marquis continued their conversation, Eris stood silently, sinking into contemplation. Poor Eris, this world is cruel to you because no one cares about your feelings. Eris stepped out of the banquet hall, intending to take a stroll in the palace courtyard to clear her mind. In the twilight, she walked and pondered. Today's banquet is like an engagement ceremony, but turning it into such a mess and not allowing a breakup, what's this all about? Do they want me to cause an even bigger scandal just to smoothly call off the engagement? Eris's mood sank to the bottom as she contemplated how the story would unfold from here. In the novel, it was originally Eris who escaped the banquet hall, but now it seemed to have switched to Helena. The sudden change left her even more confused. Walking alone, she heard sobbing. Approaching, she discovered Helena, hiding her face and crying bitterly. A sense of frustration surged through Eris. Why was Helena crying here again? What was the reason? Helena looked up, noticing Eris. She hastily stood up, trying to explain, "I'm sorry. I really didn't know this dress was yours." Helena couldn't finish her sentence before breaking into tears again. She choked out, "It's all my fault. I shouldn't be crying." Watching Helena wipe away tears, struggling to suppress her sobs, Eris softened. Clearly, none of the men responsible for bringing her to the ceremony and making her wear this dress apologized to me. Just because Helena is the weaker one among them, she's always the one who has to apologize. Eris, who always thought Helena lived a carefree and happy life, now realized it wasn't so. Even though there were no physical scars on her hand, it didn't mean there were none in her heart. So Eris told Helena, "You can cry. If you feel like crying, let it out." Though Eris still disliked Helena, she couldn't entirely blame her. Watching her suffer and suppress her tears, Eris seemed to understand Helena's predicament and difficulties. She thought to herself, saying this to her shouldn't be that big of a deal. Having said that, Eris turned and left. She sat on a chair, feeling downcast. "Anakin, bring me some wine." Actually, Eris just wanted to know if Anakin was still around, so she casually called his name. To her surprise, she heard his response. Soon, Anakin brought over wine and a variety of food. Eris asked him, "Did you take the canapés because you want some?" Anakin replied with concern, "No, I noticed you hadn't eaten anything, so I brought them. If it's not enough, I can get more." Eris said it was enough, but couldn't help but wonder, why did you only bring one glass? Anakin explained that he couldn't drink during official duties. Curious, Eris asked, even if I permit it? Anakin replied calmly, if it's your command, I'll drink, but I don't think it's that important. Hearing this, Eris leaned in, holding his chin in her hand. Importance is something I'll judge. Watching Anakin earnestly respond, yes, I'll keep that in mind. Eris burst into laughter. I'm just kidding. If you don't want to, I won't force you. After this little incident, the atmosphere lightened. Eris's mood seemed less gloomy. Having had some wine, she asked Anakin to share his story. Anakin looked surprised. My story? Eris continued, anything will do. I want to know about your past. She was curious about Anakin's life, why he became a knight, and if he had other dreams. She wanted to understand Anakin, as they were now on the same boat. Eris wanted to explore the perfect side story of this world that wasn't depicted in the novel. So, Anakin began to unfold his life story to Eris. I'm an orphan. I don't know if my parents intentionally abandoned me or had some untold secrets, but those things are not important to me anymore. In my memory, I don't have them, and I don't miss them. Not everyone with parents is destined to be happy, as some families, with parents at the core, are the source of their misfortune. I grew up in an orphanage, and when I felt I could earn my own living, I left the orphanage. That's when I encountered the kid you met. Eris interrupted. I've been meaning to ask, what's the name of that kid? Anakin replied, he's been looking forward to telling you his new name in person. If I say it first, he'll be disappointed, and he might even complain to me. Hearing this, Eris dropped the topic and asked, besides being a knight, have you ever had other dreams? Anakin responded, I didn't receive much education, not literate enough for intellectual work. Also, I'm not the kind to become a mercenary. I'm not good with people. But if I hadn't met you, I might have to become a mercenary one day. Eris teased, you'd actually make a good wandering knight. Eris could imagine Anakin wandering alone, helping those in need along the way for rewards, be it food or a place to sleep. Occasionally, someone might even give him money. After finishing a task, even if someone tried to persuade him to stay, he wouldn't. He'd walk his own path. That's the life of a wandering knight. As the night deepened, stars twinkled in the sky. Eris, feeling a bit intoxicated, suddenly exclaimed, the stars tonight are beautiful. She asked Anakin, do you recognize any constellations in the sky? Anakin pointed to the stars, saying, those are Draco and Ara. Oh, that's Ophiuchus, my lady. The two sat under the vast starry sky, talking for a long time. Gradually, as Eris looked at the man in front of her, she began to feel anxious. If she died and returned to her original world, what punishment would Anakin face? Would he be executed? And what about the maids and Helena? Would they be implicated? How many innocent lives would need to be sacrificed for her to leave this place? Eris suddenly felt so sad because she no longer regarded Anakin as a fictional character in a novel anymore. It was as if he could sense Eris's gaze. Anakin turned around, concerned, asked her, my lady, what's wrong? Trying to conceal her emotions, Eris turned her head to the sky and said, nothing, I'm fine. In reality, at this moment, she wished all the stars in the sky would come crashing down and destroy this world. The next day, Eris packed her bags. She claimed she was going to the Randall district for a break, citing the coming-of-age ceremony as the reason. She told everyone she would take the magical train to enjoy the lakeside scenery along the way and return later. Emma, concerned, asked, but there's no Marquis's villa over there. How will you manage your daily life? Eris reassured her, I feel more comfortable anywhere than in the royal family. Although she said this, Eris was well aware that she was now playing the role of a pitiable woman hurt by her fiancé's rudeness in the coming-of-age ceremony. In her heart, she calculated that it was precisely because there was no Marquis's villa in the Randall district that she could avoid Marquis Mazarian's surveillance. As she was about to leave, Emma stopped her, saying, my lady, I wish you a pleasant journey. Eris turned her head, her gaze becoming gentle. All right, I'm off, Emma. Eris knew Emma was afraid she might not come back once she left. Emma still looked worried, saying, "Please come back safely." As Eris left, she felt a bit sad, guessing Emma loved the original Eris, not her, an outsider. In the bustling, magical train station, the noise was overwhelming. Due to the inaugural run of the magical train, many people had gathered. Eris turned to Anakin and asked, "Did you do everything as I instructed?" Anakin replied, "Yes, I bought tickets for all the stations where the train will stop, just as you instructed." Eris was very satisfied, thinking, "This way, even if someone is tracking her, they won't be able to trace her immediately." Inside the carriage, the train conductor warmly greeted Eris, thanking her for choosing their magical train. They had prepared a deluxe compartment just for her, an entire section of the carriage for her exclusive use. Eris took off her hat, contemplating her next moves. She planned to disappear midway through the journey, using this trip to show them up: the royal family, the Marquess, and who else? At that moment, a wicked smile appeared on Eris's face as she thought about someone else. Eris embarked on her journey of escape, seated on the magical train, elegantly savoring a delightful meal with Anakin. However, Anakin hesitated to start eating. Curious, Eris asked, "Is the food not to your liking?" Anakin, a bit embarrassed, replied, "You didn't have to order for me, really." Eris, instantly displeased, retorted, "Am I supposed to let my knight starve?" Anakin quickly explained, "No, I meant I can eat whatever is left over from your meal. Besides, skipping a few meals won't hurt me. I'm used to it." Hearing his words, Eris slammed the table in frustration. "Even if it were my dog, I wouldn't feed it leftovers. So stop talking and eat already." Under Eris's firm attitude, Anakin reluctantly began to chew his food. Eris, eyeing Anakin, thought, "No wonder he's so thin. There's hardly any extra flesh on him except for muscles. Though I like my men on the lean side, he's not a lover. I need him to be strong and sturdy for protection." With this in mind, she called the waiter to bring 2 more servings of vanilla ice cream. Unbeknownst to them, 3 days had already passed since the train began its journey, meaning it was the perfect time to execute their escape plan. Eris initiated her strategy, starting by drawing a mole near her lips and transforming herself into the semblance of a prostitute. She asked Anakin, "Do I look convincing?" Anakin, clearly startled by her disguise, replied, "With my limited insight, it's hard to comprehend. Do you really have to do this?" It seemed he struggled to accept Eris dressed in such a manner. Eris responded, "This is the only way to deceive others. Who would imagine that the proud Lady Mazarian would disguise herself as a prostitute?" In reality, Eris felt helpless. Dressing as a prostitute was her only option. Given her physique, she couldn't disguise herself as a man, and playing an old woman wasn't in her skill set. Eris continued, telling Anakin, "Does the way I look or the way I speak matter? The fact that I, your master, Eris Mazarian, hasn't changed. Let people be deceived. Let them misunderstand. People believe only what they want to see and hear." Eris suddenly turned serious. "Anakin, see clearly. Who am I before you?" Anakin knelt before her. "You are the one who bestowed upon me a name, my sword, and my identity, Lady Eris Mazarian." Eris instructed him to rise, revealing that the prey in the trap was still waiting for them. During this journey, she planned to fool 3 subjects: Marquess Mazarian, the royal family, and the High Priest Hybris. When they arrived in the Randall district, the Marquess would likely have many spies keeping a close eye on Eris. She had to pretend to be a prostitute who came with Hybris before reaching there and then disembarking together with him. Eris was a bit worried, unsure if Anakin was following properly. At this moment, Anakin, fearing detection, had climbed onto the train's roof. As she walked past the seats, Eris glimpsed someone pretending to read a newspaper, but continuously glancing at her. Eris knew it must be an agent Marquess Mazarian had planted to monitor her. Suddenly, the person stood up. Eris panicked a bit. Could he recognize me? No, it's impossible to confirm at a glance. She continued forward, and the spy kept tailing her. A chase ensued in the aisle of the carriage. Eris felt a bit anxious, but she quickly forced herself to calm down, reaching the second-class carriage she had prearranged with Anakin. In a hushed tone, she said, "Anakin, come quickly." She knew Anakin could hear her voice, but wasn't sure if he understood. With the agent getting closer, just as he reached out to grab her, Eris suddenly ran away. She needed to find a place to hide quickly. In this critical moment, Anakin appeared, jumping into the carriage from the roof. "Is someone tracking you?" "I'll handle it," he declared. However, Eris, who didn't want to escalate the situation, quickly stopped him. Eris grabbed Anakin, and in the next moment, pressed her whole body into his arms, saying, "Quick, kiss me!" Can you believe it? This beautiful noble lady asked a common knight to kiss her. Anakin, looking at Eris approaching him, was too scared to move. Eris assured him, "It's just pretending." Their gazes intertwined instantly, and they held each other for a long time. Eris took the initiative to encircle Anakin, playfully saying, "I ran all the way here. I'm a bit out of breath." In the next second, Anakin tightly embraced Eris, as if this could transfer strength to her. The man outside had caught up, witnessing the intimate embrace of the two. Anakin glared at him angrily, as if annoyed that he had interrupted a private moment. Seeing the affectionate couple, the man tactfully turned away, realizing he must have mistaken. After the man left, Eris slightly distanced herself and asked Anakin, "Did that man leave?" Anakin replied that he had gone far away. Eris, feeling relieved, finally could catch her breath. She then apologized to Anakin. "Sorry for suddenly making you kiss me. Did it make you uncomfortable?" Anakin calmly responded, "No." Eris told Anakin, "In the future, even if it's my command, you can refuse if you don't want to do it. If I make you do something terrible, don't forgive me." Eris knew Anakin would never refuse her orders, but she hoped he wouldn't go through various efforts just to understand her. In the days to come, she would only do more wrong, and all of it would stain his hands. Later, Eris arrived at the compartment where High Priest Hybris was. She opened the door, walked in, and Hybris immediately recognized Eris, surprised by her peculiar appearance. Eris found it a bit amusing that, instead of the unexpected visit, he was more concerned about her disguise. She then sat opposite Hybris. "You're going to see Priest Matthias, right? Please take me with you." Going back a few days, when Eris learned from Emma that the magical train was faster than a carriage, a plan took root in her mind. She instructed Anakin to have the boy deliver a message to Hybris, stating that the former priest Matthias was critically ill and needed a prompt visit. Hybris was puzzled. "Aren't you going to the Randall district?" Eris smiled. "That's what I say publicly, so I need the High Priest's help." Upon hearing this, Hybris finally realized, "So, you disguised yourself to avoid being followed?" Eris praised him for being smart, but this time, "I need the High Priest to help me complete the disguise." As the train's whistle echoed, the train attendant shook the bell in her hand. "We're about to reach Bonita Station. Passengers getting off, please get ready." Eris stood up and said with a smile, "For me, please play the part of a lustful high priest for a while." Hybris felt speechless. Was this woman joking? After getting off the train, the station buzzed with discussions. No one could believe that the high priest was casually mingling with a courtesan, and this courtesan even wore a radiant smile. Observing Hybris's awkward expression, Eris knew that, due to his status, he must be concerned about others' judgment. The situation must be embarrassing for him. They switched to a carriage and drove along a forest path. Hybris stared closely at Eris, who sensed his gaze and asked, "Why are you staring at me?" Hybris quickly turned away, stammering without words. Then, he secretly glanced at Anakin. Eris's lazy voice came, "Don't mind him. He's my person. You can speak conformably with him around." Hybris, unwilling to disclose information, said, "It's been a few days. Your soul seems more stable." Eris was surprised. "You can see that?" Hybris remarked, "It seems you finally accepted your life in this world." "Indifferent," Eris replied. "Consider it the preparatory phase before my complete disappearance." Hybris warned her not to do anything foolish. Thinking he was going to dissuade her, Eris teased, Are you going to preach about life being a divine gift again? Then, with a firm tone, she said, You don't have to repeat such words. In reality, you don't care about whether Eris lives or dies, do you? Our protagonist said this because, having read the original novel, she knew Hybris was Eris's hidden half-brother. The original Eris quickly relied on Hybris upon discovering their relationship. However, when Eris needed help, Hybris turned away coldly, exploiting Eris's loneliness for the sake of saving Helena. In our protagonist's eyes, that was a complete betrayal. Eris snapped back to the present, her tone chilling as she asserted that she still couldn't die, so there was no need to worry. Everyone has an ending that suits them, right? In this novel, Eris's death is supposed to be an epic highlight of the story, and the readers most want to witness the tragic demise of the villainous Eris. If this whole world is just a grand play, I wonder what song would be played just before the curtain rings down. After a long and bumpy journey, Eris and her companions finally arrived at Priest Matthias's residence. Hearing a knock, Matthias opened the door, looking surprised at the group, and asked, Hybris, why are you here all of a sudden? Hybris reassured him, saying he wanted to see him well, while Eris warmly greeted him, expressing that she had some questions and came without notice. Matthias stared at her in astonishment, and Eris continued her introduction. You can call me Lady Myssarian, or you can call me the Outsider. Eris knew Matthias could see her soul's colors, so there was no need to hide. After the introduction, Priest Matthias understood her purpose and hastily invited them inside. During a tea preparation break, Hybris asked Eris, The kid who delivered the message, was he sent by you? Eris innocently smiled. You just noticed now? I thought you knew back on the train. Hybris was a bit angry. How can you be so calm after deceiving me? Eris lazily responded, How can you easily believe others' words? I was genuinely concerned someone might set a trap for you. Despite her words, Eris knew Hybris considered Matthias as a father figure, and using Matthias to deceive him made him genuinely angry. But who would know that the honest and loyal Hybris was Marquis Myssarian's illegitimate son? Moreover, who could have guessed that the dancer who bore the Marquis's child would entrust the baby to the Great Temple? Matthias came back with the tea, asking why Eris came to this remote place. I am afraid this useless man might disappoint you. Eris replied, Why would you disappoint me? This is a question only Priest Matthias can answer. When the dragon sacrificed the life of the dragon slayer Jason to achieve its death, what was the oracle the dragon gave to you? Jason said the dragon violated the law of causality, forged the oracle, and thus altered fate. The voice of the dragon during the oracle was different from that of the gods. Didn't you notice? Matthias took a sip of tea, closed his eyes, and said, I didn't notice it at the time. After some time, I realized the difference and panicked. Eris continued to press him. Do you remember the content of the oracle? Matthias put down his teacup and slowly said, Of course, I remember it vividly. The child who is born 9th, when the moon set for the 3rd time, must pierce the sword in the mad dragon. Only that child can eliminate the mad dragon. Therefore, on the day the mad dragon's life ends, everything will return to how it was supposed to be according to the law. Eris found herself inexplicably transported into a novel, a world where divine powers and magic coexisted, and everything followed the law of causality. However, Priest Matthias claimed ignorance about the law Eris inquired about, asserting that he was just a minuscule and foolish being compared to the grand truth. Unyielding, Eris persisted, Are there any other oracle? After pondering for a moment, Matthias replied, No, because God doesn't give out any oracles. People believe I'm the only one who receives divine will, earning me the title of High Priest and the highest honor. So when I discovered that what I heard wasn't God's oracle, but the dragon's words, I didn't confess. I couldn't relinquish the honor I possessed. Matthias continued regretfully, I ruined someone's whole life and never could speak the truth. I was weak. With that, Matthias left with tears of remorse, leaving Hybris at a loss for words. Eris, meanwhile, struggled to recall the novel's plot. Jason's fate as the Dragon Slayer was the author's creation, essentially representing the will of the gods. Could the dragon's mentioned law refer to that? What did the dragon's words truly alter? Did it change anything at all, or could the dragon have lied to Jason? But Eris quickly dismissed the thought. No, that's not right. What if the original oracle wasn't about the mad dragon, but another dragon? The novel only mentions the dragon slayer Jason killing a dragon, but doesn't specify which one. Then the only reason the mad dragon altered the oracle was to make Jason kill himself. She hurriedly asked Matthias, "Are dragons not able to take their own lives?" Matthias responded, "You're asking a strange question. Have you ever seen nature end its own life? Dragons are the most magnificent creatures created by the gods. Their existence is like nature itself, flourishing with the passage of time. Of course, even such great beings will die when their time comes to an end. However, insignificant humans can't fathom the lengthy lifespans dragons endure. It's akin to how humans can never comprehend the longevity of floating entities." Listening to his explanation, Eris believed her guess was correct. Exactly. It seems the dragon couldn't die off, just like me. With this realization, tremors ran through Eris's body. The intense discomfort in her mind translated into physical reactions, and she suddenly began to retch. She hastily ran outside, with Anakin following, concerned. Eris ran deep into the woods, leaning against a tree trunk to catch her breath. Anakin, following closely, handed her a handkerchief with care. As Eris turned to look at Anakin, a warm glow emanated from him. Whenever she needed him, he was there. Taking the handkerchief, Eris asked Anakin, "Do you have the mirror?" Anakin replied, "Yes. Do you need it now?" "Yeah, I need to have a chat with the sorceress," Eris responded. The two of them entered the forest as night fell, and the path grew increasingly dim. They arrived at a riverside clearing. Eris felt it was secluded enough for their conversation not to be overheard. She took out the mirror and shouted, "Medea, I have something to ask you." Instantly, the enchanting face of the sorceress appeared in the mirror. "What's going on? Using mirrors now?" Eris voiced her suspicions. Did the mad dragon fabricate the oracle, wanting to use Jason to kill itself? Medea was startled by her words. "You always manage to surprise me." Eris continued, "Anyway, Jason's fate was just to kill a dragon, not a specific one." Medea confirmed, "Yes, because, like you, the mad dragon is also an outsider." In that moment, Eris learned a staggering secret. The sorceress Medea revealed, "The mad dragon in this world is also an outsider." However, this revelation didn't shock Eris. Instead, she remained oddly calm. Medea continued, "Initially, the outsider attached to the dragon was content with his new life. Dragons, being the world's mightiest creatures, were fearless and virtually omnipotent. Helping humans establish a kingdom was effortless for him. He lived diligently, swiftly falling in love with a desirable dragon and raising little ones together. However, the seemingly eternal happiness gradually faded with time, replaced by a period of weariness that tormented him for a long while. He slowly descended into madness. In this state, he, now the mad dragon, sought out the sorceresses, wishing for them to kill him. While the sorceresses acknowledged that it wasn't impossible, they foresaw complications in the aftermath. So, Sorceress Circe made a deal with the mad dragon. Although she couldn't directly kill the dragon, she informed him of a method for his death. The mad dragon willingly accepted Circe's proposed price. Medea continued her tale. That day, Circe informed the mad dragon that the world was soon to witness a destined dragon slayer. Mad dragon, you had to take away the slayer's fate. On the day the slayer killed the mad dragon, the entire world would shatter. That day, the pitiful dragon, supposed to die according to the law, not only lost her beloved, but also her intended death. Despair consumed the dragon, robbed of death. Contemplating how to regain her fate, she made a resolute decision. The dragon sacrificed her heart as an offering to this world, violating the world's law of causality, to reclaim her fate. Ironically, at that moment, two girls' desires proved stronger and more profound than the dragon's wish. In a sense, it could be called a miracle, but in another sense, it was a misfortune. Or perhaps, it was both. On that day, Emma prayed for the fulfillment of the girl in her arms' wish, while Eris wished to vanish from this world forever. Thus, the dragon's heart fulfilled the wishes of the two girls. Consequently, the girl's soul and the dragon's heart disappeared together. Simultaneously, the world's law of causality brought in a new soul, entering the girl's now empty shell. That soul, living on in her stead, is you. Upon hearing this news, Eris fell apart. Tears streamed down her face, and she repeated, why me? Answer me. Some might dream of having such a life, but why did it have to be me? What did I do wrong?" After listening to Medea's story, Eris had a splitting headache. Her emotions were far from settling, and in her anger, she trembled while holding the mirror. Fiercely, she hurled the mirror into the river, not wanting to hear Medea's mood-altering words any longer. Suddenly, a commotion erupted, and it turned out that Hybris had been eavesdropping on their conversation, caught red-handed by Anakin. Anakin, detaining Hybris, sought Eris's guidance on how to proceed. Hybris, unable to contain himself, shouted, "You're colluding with a sorceress. Don't you know that's a grave offense?" Eris approached him. "It might be a grave offense for people from your country, but I'm an outsider. What does it have to do with me?" Hybris, agitated, said, "Since you've possessed Lady Mazirian's body, you're one of us now." Eris sneered. "So what? Are you going to report me? I welcome it. After all, you already know about me. Since I can't die from a sword thrust, maybe I can die in the flames. Go ahead and report me." Upon hearing this, Hybris, in an outburst of emotion, interrupted her. He exclaimed, "Lady Mazirian!" with a pained expression on his face. Subsequently, Eris instructed Anakin to release Hybris so he could report her. Anakin complied, sheathing the sword pointed at Hybris. However, just as he put the sword back into its scabbard, Eris seemed to remember something. She abruptly pulled out Anakin's sword and tossed it in front of Hybris, saying, "Think about it. You don't need to report me because, as the High Priest, you have the authority to execute me on the spot. So use this sword to end me. After all, collaborating with a sorceress is no different from being a sorceress, right?" Our protagonist made this statement because she knew from the novel that Hybris had used this authority to threaten Eris. He knew she wasn't a sorceress, but his sister, and yet he insulted her, calling Eris filthy blood. She thought, "Yet now he pities me genuinely because I haven't harmed Helena, the one he loves. I haven't become a villainess yet." Despite everything, like disliking Helena, Eris couldn't bring herself to like Hybris. She told him, "If you don't kill me now, just continue pretending not to know anything in the future. I'm an outsider, and my collusion with the sorceress, please, act like you don't know. After all, I'll die soon, but I promise not to die in front of you." Hybris, eyes filled with tears, couldn't understand why Eris kept saying such things. It wasn't out of fear that he spoke those words earlier. He was genuinely sad for her. "What should I do to make you stop this?" Hybris was at a loss, seeking forgiveness and understanding from Eris's anger. "So please, don't die," he pleaded. Eris slowly reached out, wiping the tears from Hybris's face. She calmly said, "Don't pity me, it's quite repulsive." Anakin suddenly intervened, knocking Hybris unconscious. He then lifted him, preparing to take him back to the small cabin they had come from, leaving Eris alone, waiting for his return. Eris dipped her feet into the river, seeking a moment of calm. She knew she had to recall the details from the novel, preparing for what lay ahead. However, at that moment, she felt a sense of futility, as if everything had lost its meaning. In the future, she could only exist as Eris, a puppet, until the day ordained by the law of causality when she could finally die. In her previous world, effort could bring about change, but here, she was powerless. Soon, Anakin hurried back, joining Eris by the river. Eris teased him, "You walk pretty fast." Anakin, with a serious expression, replied, "I was worried about you, afraid you'd leave me alone." Eris found it somewhat amusing. "Are you afraid I'll take my own life?" After hesitating for a while, Anakin couldn't contain himself and confessed, I want to understand my master. I want to know what your previous life was like and what kind of life you want in the future. I shouldn't have these thoughts, but I'm more afraid of not having the chance to know you." Our protagonist knew that in the novel, this man would fall in love with Eris, becoming the Black Knight who always protected her. She felt a pang of regret. If only Anakin's story appeared in the novel like the other male leads. After a moment of silence, Eris spoke. "Come over, lift me up. I don't want to walk anymore." Eris lay quietly in Anakin's arms. She was exhausted. Her face rested against his chest, and she remarked, "In the sound of this heartbeat, there's no trace of love, just steady." The pure warmth and kindness in Anakin's current demeanor, even if it wasn't love, provided a comforting feeling. Eris closed her eyes, drifting into a deep sleep in Anakin's broad and warm embrace.